राम राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा हरे हरे राम
Like this is there? Yeah, like this. Hare Krishna.
हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम
कैसा?
राम राम हरे हरे
इतना पास रहेगा?
हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
जय जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद
जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद
जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद
जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद
ताई गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल गौर हरि बोल
नित्य गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल
श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। जगत गुरु शिला प्रभुपाद की जय। संवेद गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। निताई गौर प्रेमानंदे।
Hare Krishna. So if you move a little bit back, I want to survive. Thank you. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopirana Balaba Jaya Giritvaratari Gopirana Balaba Jaya Giritvaratari Jaya Yasodanandana Jaya Brajanarandana Jaya Brajanarandana Yasodanandana Jaya Brajanarandana Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jai Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Madhava Jaya Krishna Jaya Radha Janandana Yasoda Nandana Jaya Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Kunda Vihari Kunda Vihari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Kunda Vihari Kunda Vihari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Kunda Vihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 1, 2, 3 Hare Krishna Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 1, 2, 3 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Rama. Come on, Hare Krishna Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhu. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Shila Prabhupada ki jai, Shila Prabhupada ki jai, Go Premananda.
It's such a loud roaring kirtan, I don't think there is an introduction required, but still. So His Grace Prithu Prabhu was born and brought up in a traditional family.
Not in Russia. Born in Russia?
No, Germany.
Okay.
He was born and brought up in a traditional family of Germany and pursued his studies in the field of comparative religion in Bonn University. He came in contact with ISKCON in 1972. He got Ishopanishad book from devotees, read it in one night and joined ISKCON next day. Haribo! Prabhuji received initiation from His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada in the same year, that is 1972. He actively assisted Srila Prabhupada in preaching Krishna consciousness and arranged meeting of Prabhupada with various philosophers, including famous German philosopher Graf Durkheim. Later on, he served as the temple president in Germany, further started center in Switzerland, and subsequently also served as the temple president in Amsterdam. Later, he was also in charge of Detroit temple. Subsequently, Prabhuji went to Ireland and started a wonderful farm community over there. Later, he came to India and started Srila Prabhupada Vani Ashram in ISKCON Vrindavan. In India, he had travelling bus party to preach in various colleges, including IIT Kanpur. He preached in IIT Kanpur from 1987 till 1995 for 8 years, and many members became devotees, placed as professors in IIT Guwahati, IIT Varanasi, COEP Pune, serving in Bhaktivedanta Institute, etc. Our His Grace Gaurlila Prabhu was also fortunate, while being in Kanpur, to come in touch with Prabhuji. And then Prabhuji started preaching in Russia afterwards. 2 years ago, moved from Germany to India. Since that time, he has been traveling and preaching extensively in different places. He met Srila Prabhupada several times in Germany, France, Paris, London, India, and he was also present personally in the last 3 weeks of Srila Prabhupada's departure from this planet. He altogether served as GBC for 20 years from 1984 to 2004 for places like Ireland, Germany, America, Oregon, Washington, Vrindavan, Hyderabad, Delhi, etc. and was also serving with His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. He raised his children in good Krishna consciousness and they are nicely practicing Krishna consciousness, including his grandchildren. The other day he gave Prabhupada Katha. I was stunned by one pastime. So his authority there in the temple told him that you can marry this girl. And he was stunned. He was a brahmachari. He had no plan to marry. So what for? She can cook Sunday feast. So then, as submission he agreed. So you can imagine. So he got married for the purpose of Sunday feast cooking, with absolutely not knowing who the girl is, all details. We put so many conditions, but Prabhuji is selfless, completely surrendered to Prabhupada's mission. For the sake of enhancing the mission, he got married and we can see how he preached. So we are very fortunate to have Prabhuji amongst us. Let us welcome him by loudly chanting Hari Bol! Hari Bol! Hari Bol! His Grace Prithu Prabhu ki jai! Srila Prabhupada ki jai!
Why doesn't it show this? It actually should work, It does. We're done. Okay. So, my commentary to this long introduction is, Prabhupada says that every human being has faults and glory. Everybody who's on this planet has some fault and some glory. So he's talking about the glory. That's another side to it. as everybody knows. And even the moon has a dark side. And the most perfect person in this regard is, of course, the subject of our present meeting, that we want to glorify Srila Prabhupada. Now, I'm new to this program, actually, and this will require some patience from your side. What's happening? How do I get this picture, this? I probed all morning to get it right, and now I see I'm in a mess. Okay, this is good, okay. Om Gyan Timidanda Syagananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumritam Yinatasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Gira Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Siguru Siyuta Parakamalam Sigurun Vaishnavam Sa Sirupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sarivam Sadvaitam Svaduta Parjana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Larita Shivirakam Vitam Sa Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpati Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gurangi Radhe Vindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sujadevi Pranamami Hiri Pre Vanchakalpataruva Sakripa Sindhu Vayach Paditana Pavanevi Vaishnavira Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. We cannot imagine the sacrifices Srila Prabhupada went through to preach Krishna consciousness in Western countries. We cannot imagine. Even before Prabhupada came to the West, he was living in Vrindavan and in Keshigat, in these, yesterday I was talking about it, in Keshigat. And in Radha Damodar temple, he had high fever, lying on a straw mat in winter. I mean, I'm fleeing the winter. I go to Mumbai in winter because it's just too much for my body. And he was lying on a straw mat, the kind of mat you're sitting on it. And his god brother said, you have to get a bed, otherwise you die. And Prabhupada said, I want to use every rupee for book distribution. So then, even getting out of India, even going to Delhi selling the magazines in the heat of the summer. I mean, think about that. I mean, I have been in Vrindavan in one summer. It must have been 30 years ago or so. And I was standing on the roof and I was wondering whether I should jump. It was just too much. Too much. My heart went, particular white body. And so he stayed there. And then finally he got all the papers together, all the permissions together, printed his 3 Bhagavatams, and then crossed the ocean, one heart attack after the other. I mean, and then he landed in America and had another heart attack. And Brahmananda Prabhu, who was very close to him, he's the one who actually published Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita with Macmillan Company, the biggest publishing company in the world, which was a huge victory for Prabhupada, one of the victories. And so he brought him to the hospital, and the doctor examined him. Then he went over to Brahmananda, and he said, and Prabhupada heard it, he could hear that. He said, this old man is praying too much. He should walk. And so from that day on, Prabhupada laughed when he heard that. Prabhupada heard it, he laughed full-heartedly. And I walk every day. And he walked every day, so fast. I mean, Prabhupada, he was in shape in the beginning in New York. on top of the Second Avenue Temple, there was an apartment. There was a garden there, and there was an apartment on the second floor. And Prabhupada, I was taught by who was it, Pradumna, his Sanskrit expert. He was jumping 2 steps at a time. You know, he was jumping. He was so enthusiastic. Because the truth is that he actually hit a gold mine. Because in India, it was very difficult to raise young people to Krishna consciousness. Particularly, naturally, there's pressure from the parents, finish your studies and then become this or that. And to get people to just leave it and just preach Krishna consciousness is very difficult. You need young people if you want to do something. Yesterday I said, if you want to go to the army, I cannot go to the Indian army anymore. They need people 16, 17, 18, 20, 24, and that's... So Prabhupada, he met this amazing amount of people internationally, a whole movement, alternative movement, protesting against mundane society. It was amazing. It was amazing. I mean, everywhere in London, in Amsterdam, in Berlin, in New York, in Los Angeles, people were demonstrating. Italy, all of Europe, young people, against the Vietnam War. That was the start. And then against society, capitalistic society in general. And then ultimately, where do we go from here? And people, the common answer was, we have to go to spirituality. And so many groups appeared and sang spiritual songs. The Beatles were there, but there were also others. It became a major thing that we have to go to the East, because in Europe, there's a saying since the 15th century that ex oriente delux, as the light comes from the East, because they knew that because there was no, at that time, there was a constant exchange between the East and the West. In the Roman Empire, they had elephants. Not the empire itself, Carthago, the enemy. They had elephants. Carthago was in Africa. They went all the way over the mountains, over the Alps to Rome. You cannot train African elephants. It's impossible. They're like bullocks. They have not bullocks. What do you call it? Water buffalo. They're like buffaloes. They have no brains. You cannot train them. You need Indian elephants to train them. And so they had Indian elephants training, and they had peacocks in the Roman courts. And they had silk that came from Benares. I mean, there was interaction between that, and naturally knowledge came from the East. That's how the Greek philosophers got knowledge. You know, who was it? Socrates. He was put to death because he was preaching that we are not the body, we are spirit soul. And when they read his death sentence, he said, "Catch me if you can." They was about to. They gave him the bowl of poison, and he said, "All right, catch me when you can." And he drank it, and the body was dead, because he knew that he was not the body, right? He knew, "Catch me if you can." And so in the West, the searching for the East was on since a long time. Bhagavad Gita was read in the 17th century in Germany by one famous Professor Humboldt. And first translations appeared in Germany, and there was an Indian society, even from the 18th century on, where people were interested in Indian philosophy. And you had big Indian scholars like, what was his famous German scholar? Name doesn't come to me right now. Who were studying Indian philosophy. It was a big thing. So I studied in the university comparative religion, and the emphasis was on India. Our professor was a Buddhist. And so then I was working in this direction. I was searching that there must be a way out of here. Out of the material world. There must be a way out of here. And the way out of here, when Prabhupada came, he showed that way. He showed that way. It was unbelievable. People followed him like anything, everywhere, young people, not old people. Prabhupada said, young trees you can bend, old trees break. So young people followed him like anything. Wherever Prabhupada would go, people would gather. They wanted to hear the philosophy of India. The German foreign minister said about 35,000 young people from the university left for India every year. 35,000, that's a lot. And they were worried about the youth of Germany. So many people were influenced. Yoga appeared, yoga societies appeared. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, I heard recently, I read an article in the Irish Times, and a journalist spoke, what is the most powerful influence on Ireland in the last 50 years? And said, Hare Krishna. Yoga, vegetarianism, interest in Eastern philosophy, Buddhism, so many things. He said it all started with the Hare Krishna movement. Right? I mean, we were ridiculed in court in the beginning. There was some court case that we can't have kirtan on the street, and the judge said, why you look like that? Dress yourself properly. I mean, no judge would dare to say this nowadays in Ireland. You know, we were persecuted quite a bit. I can have another evening on that. Persecution of the Hare Krishna movement in Western countries. But Prabhupada was so overwhelming that people followed him, and he said, don't take it serious. Don't take it serious. First they will ridicule us. Then they will persecute us. And then by the end they will follow us. The Prabhupada said, first ridicule. And that was the first thing, you know. And I can't help it, but this amazing story came to my mind in Russia. One devotee was ridiculing the devotees, one student, repeatedly on the street. And the devotees were he was laughing about them. The devotees laughed back, and they said, oh, a very nice boy. He was waving, they were waving. And so they established some sort of a relationship that whenever he saw the devotees, he would ridicule the devotees, saying, here they're coming, the dancing penguins, you know. And laughing with his friends, and the devotees were seeing in Moscow that they were laughing. Oh, they laughed also and waved. And so he developed this rasa with the devotees. Every time he ridiculed them. One day he had a deadly car accident, and he drove into a truck that was lying on the street at night. And all of a sudden, brilliant light, like phosphoric light. And there were 3 guys standing there and said, so we are here. Horns, tusks, claws. They threw a lasso around his neck and pulled him out, the soul. Within seconds, he appeared in front of a court. There was a man sitting on a very high throne, hundreds of people in the court. And he said, okay, Nikolai Ivanovich, I'm waiting for you. Sit down. What has he done? So Gupta, the secretary, stood up there, said, he has a very bad life, Your Lordship. He has been hunting women, he has been drinking vodka, he has been stealing, he has been lying, he had illicit sex all over the place, and he's a rascal. So the judge person said, anything good? He said, yes. Every time he saw the devotees of our Lord, Sri Krishna, man on the throne went like this. Everybody went down, you know, paying obeisances, a moment of total silence. He said, what happened? Every time he saw the devotees of our Lord Krishna, he was waving them. The judge said, waving them? How many times? 27 times. Excellent. What would you do if I give you another chance? I become a Hare Krishna. The man on the throne said, Hari Bol, you go right back. It's a true story. I tell you why, you will find in the end. He said, so he was thrown into his body, he saw all of a sudden somebody was working on his breast. One doctor said, he's coming, he's coming, he's coming. And he went to the temple. And the devotee is saying, you're fortunate, this Yamaraj you see only one time in your life. You see only one time. And you have to join this movement now, you promised. And he joined, became a devotee, is in the Hare Krishna movement, he's written many books. So you can see how this little thing of just waving the devotees Nehavikramana pratyana navidyate svapamapyasa dharmasya trayati matubhayat. Even little work on this path, even little activity on this path saves one from the greatest type of fear. So if Prabhupada would have come 5 years earlier, it would have been very difficult in America, because you need the youth rebelling, basically speaking, leaving everything behind. I mean, we left. We were finished. Thousands of young people left the universities. I mean, our Institute for Sociology turned into a zoo. Professor himself was into it. He said, let's forget about all that. Let's go on the street. You cannot imagine. It was amazing. So Prabhupada came, Krishna arranged it. The whole thing is Krishna's arrangement. And this I will start from a very beginning of a very beautiful story. Once upon a time, 5,000 years ago, Lord Krishna prepared to go to the spiritual world. Ganga Devi approached him. Said, my Lord, when you leave, I will be alone on this planet, and all these sinful karmis will deposit their sins in my river, and I will go down to hell. Please help me. Krishna smiled and said, don't worry. There is a plan B. And that plan B is the following. That very soon, there will be chanting of my name all over the world. All over the world. And then, he said, the next step, gradually, people will read Bhagavatam. And it's interesting that it says in Bhagavatam, this scripture will cause a revolution in mankind. We don't see much of a revolution right now, but it will in mankind, not in the Hare Krishna movement. It didn't say it will cause a revolution in ISKCON and its members. It didn't say that, in mankind. And then step number 3, everyone will offer his food to Krishna, to me. Because it says in the Gita, the devotees of the Lord eat food, only foodstuff that is offered in sacrifice. Others eat only sins. So Krishna at that time planned these 3 items, very important to understand. Number 1, what was it? Chanting of the holy name all over the world. Number B, Bhagavatam will be prominent. Number C, prasadam. People eat prasadam. And then he said, and this movement, this was the last sentence he spoke, in this whole section of about 12 shlokas, he said, this movement will go on for 10,000 years. And this is exactly what we are having here. 4,500 years later, Lord Chaitanya appeared. Krishna, he didn't just talk. Krishna put it into practice. He came himself, actually, to promote the Hare Krishna movement. And he said everywhere, no, every town, Prithiviti, Achiyati, Nagarari, Gram, and every town, village, my name will be chanted. It may be small now, but everything begins small. I mean, there was only one man, one single man, Srila Prabhupada, who took the message of his spiritual master so serious that he went to Western countries. And you see what one man can do. What one man can do. I was sitting in 1985 or something in San Francisco. There was a temple there. I was involved in running it. And so I sat at Hippie Hill. This is where Prabhupada started to preach in San Francisco. And I was chanting, and there was an old man coming by pushing a shopping cart. He was homeless, obviously. All his belongings were in the shopping cart. You see this sometimes. Maybe not in India, but in the West, very common. They take a shopping cart and put all this stuff in it. So it was black. And he looked at me like this. I became a little worried, what's happening. And then he said, that guy who started this Hare Krishna, he was a cool cat. I mean, to call somebody a cool cat is the highest praise in the black community. So I had to laugh when he said Prabhupada is a cool cat, He was a cool, eyes like this, he was a cool cat. And then he said, I was living in the Bowery. And the house he was living in was right in front of me. It was a complete mess. Broken house. He said, and then he said, but, he shook his head, Jesus was born in a barn. And then he walked away. It was very beautiful. He saw the comparison, that this was a very humble beginning of Christianity in a barn, right? In a barn. You know, there's a joke in this regard, that the heavens, and I will tell you that joke, I can't resist it actually, coming to think about it. It's, the heavens were making an excursion, like the school makes an excursion sometimes, right? And so there was wondering, where do we go this year? And somebody said, to Bethlehem. And Mary said, no, never again. I didn't get a room last time. We were living in a barn. Never Israel. Somebody said, Jerusalem. Jesus said, out of question. You know, I have enough of Jerusalem. I've seen enough, because he was crucified there. Somebody said, Rome. The Holy Spirit says, great idea. I've never been there. So the Holy Spirit, I mean, the knowledge of I've never been there. It's kind of funny, but it's really interesting, because the one thing we are missing in all Western religiosity is understanding of the soul. There's no concept, defined concept of soul, without which you cannot understand anything. You cannot understand who you are, you don't know where you're coming from, you don't know where you're going to, you don't understand why the innocent suffer, nothing you can understand, in any case. So Prabhupada, he went into this, that Lord Chaitanya, he spread, and Nityananda, he told Lord Chandas Thakur that my, what is it, Senapati, my Senapati will come, and he will spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. And then Nityananda, he saw a beautiful temple raising on the other side, which is built right now. You see? And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, when will the day come that Russians, Germans, Americans will dance in kirtan? It's happening everywhere, you know. I mean, I fled the summer this year and went to Kodaikanal, which is as high as you can get, 2,200 meters, 2,200 meters to get away from the heat. When I arrived in the middle of the wilderness, one Prabhupada disciple has some ashram there, I heard some kirtan. I said, what's happening here? He said, Russians. The Russians are everywhere. If you go ever to the moon, you'll find, even on Mars, the Russians will be there, you know. And so it has gone all over the world, and it's increasing and increasing and increasing, and it all starts 5,000 years ago. This is a historicity of the Hare Krishna movement, from Lord Krishna to Ganga all the way to Prabhupada. And then from Prabhupada it starts, and this is what we want to talk about, Srila Prabhupada, my personal experience with Srila Prabhupada. Now this is not a good photo that you see here. It is a Xerox copy of the original. And I folded it because I didn't want to lose it. This is my most important picture, besides pictures of Krishna and Lord Chaitanya. Because this is in Amsterdam, and Prabhupada came to Amsterdam. And I came the day before from Germany by plane, and I knew where the immigration is. I had to go through immigration at that time. So all the devotees were down there. We were excited, and they had a huge kirtan and down there where the conveyor belts are running, or in that area. And so I saw Prabhupada, he was in immigration. And then all of a sudden I lifted up the camera, ready to go, and I saw Prabhupada lifted his hand and was waving, and I clicked the shutter. So there is no, on this picture, it's a personal picture, nobody can have a claim on it. I was the only person who saw it. I have the worldwide universal copyright for this picture because I made this picture. Nobody behind me. So it's a very deep picture to me. And the first time I saw Prabhupada, and he passed by, I had to cry, I had to laugh. I had all kinds of contradicting emotions. My whole body was trembling like a leaf. when I would bow down and I saw these little feet passing by, I cried, I laughed, I had huge emotions like I never had before. Normally you either laugh or you either cry. It rarely goes together. But in this case it was all mixed together, like a kid tree. And, well, it is, And so he passed by and he went downstairs and he gave his press conference in the VIP room. Now, I could understand Prabhupada only slightly, 50%. Why? Because his English was not English, it was Bengali English. And so we would say there are many birds in the forest. So what is a bird? What is it, a bird? Every Bengali will tell you it means bird. That's the translation of bird, many birds. And so many words like that I couldn't understand. So in the morning I listened to Prabhupada's tape, 50% understood, the rest I had no clue. Then I heard Prabhupada talking, and now the wonderful thing happened, and it is true, Krishna is my witness, it's absolutely true. I could understand every word. And then I went back when we brought Prabhupada back, in a VW bus, by the way. There was a driver, there was another devotee, and then there was Prabhupada, all in front of a VW bus, and 17 people in the back. I mean, how do you fit 17 people? You have to be a brahmachari to do that. It's almost like Indians driving to Rishikesh or something, with something like 25 people in a Tata Sumo. Some people hanging outside. And so we picked up Prabhupada. He was delighted to see us. And he didn't care whether he rides in a VW bus or in a Ford Fiesta. Later he came in a Ford Fiesta to the center. He didn't mind that at all. When somebody asked him, Swamiji, why are you driving Rolls Royce? They picked him up in a Rolls Royce. In London, John Lennon gave him also his Rolls Royce. And Prabhupada said, if somebody gives me Rolls Royce, I drive Rolls Royce. If somebody gives me a bicycle, I come with a bicycle. So he didn't care. He was completely detached. And so it was miraculous that from that moment on I could understand Srila Prabhupada. When I came home, I listened to tape, understood every word. And I was a young devotee. I want to just show you a couple of pictures here. You see here, this is our Harinam party. And here on this picture you see, there's Bhakti Baba Swami. And here, this boy, before he came to Krishna consciousness, he was a butcher. So we preached to him, and he became a butcher. He became a devotee. and he told me personally what he did, and I will not describe it because I don't want to upset the mind of the Lordship. I mean, unbelievable what butchers do. It's incredible. We cannot even imagine. Paul McCartney said, if the slaughterhouses would have glass walls, he said the world would become vegetarian because it's so cruel. The world become vegetarian if there would be glass walls that people can see from outside, inside, what's going on inside. So anyway, he was a butcher. And when Prabhupada initiated him in Germany, I show you the picture actually, if you come to that, he took his beads like this, what are the 4 regular principles, etc., etc., and then Prabhupada gave him the beads, and then just before he could get it, he went back. And Prabhupada said, you have to promise me one thing more. Don't kill any animals anymore. So Prabhupada knew. He knew. I mean, Super Soul told him, this is a butcher. And the same thing happened in New York temple, I was told, that Prabhupada recognized one of the new initiates was a butcher before. And but you see the mercy that even a butcher can come to Krishna consciousness. And he did a lot of work later on in this movement, because he knew how to do things. And so here, this is Prithu Das here. You can hardly recognize. was our kirtan party in the early temple in, this is in Frankfurt, I believe. And so I show another picture here. Here is Srila Prabhupada, you can see that, and here is your servant, Prithu Das. Yes, you can see it. One of these wonderful moments that you're close to Prabhupada. And now, he came to Germany in 74. I became initiated in 72, in the same year. And every day we were on the streets preaching Krishna consciousness. I was harassed by the Christians all the time in Germany, all the time. And so I learned gradually how to smash them. You know, they followed me wherever I wanted to do book distribution. And so then Prabhupada came to Germany, and I got a phone call from a servant, Satsvarup Maharaj, or maybe somebody else. I got a phone call, and you have to arrange Prabhupada meeting important persons. And now one of the people I was able to bring to Prabhupada is this gentleman here. He's a very, very famous Zen Buddhist, decorated highly by the German government. He was before the ambassador of Germany to Japan. And he comes from a very old aristocratic family. It's at least 800,000 years old. Very old family. Even in our temple, opposite our temple, the street is called Durkheim, after him. Durkheim Street. And so, very learned, and very, although he had so many accolades, even from the German government, because of his work for the government, for the use of Germany, he was extremely intelligent and very humble. I know intelligent because I asked him, there was a riddle. Everybody knows what a riddle is? I have to learn that. Riddle is, like famous riddle is what walks on 4 feet in the beginning, on 2 feet in the middle, and on 4 legs in the end. On 3 legs in the end is a cane. It's a human being. That's a riddle. In the beginning, as a baby, they crawl. Then they walk on 2 legs. In the end, they need a cane. That's called a riddle. So I heard a complicated riddle that nobody in the whole movement I ever met at that time knew how to solve it, even our authorities. And I had no clue. So somehow or other, Krishna pushed me to ask him. He said, Professor Durkheim, I have a question. There's one riddle I cannot understand, and I've not met anybody. He said, well, let's get into it. What is it? And so I explained to him. He said, give me a minute. He thought like this, was sitting there. 5 minutes, he got it. He got it. He was very intelligent. I've never seen anybody yet, even nowadays, to be able to solve that. He got it. And he was 72 years old. Pretty good. And so Prabhupada loved this man. I'm in the middle here, as you can see. In this discussion, Prabhupada here, I had to help with the translation sometimes. This is Durkheim and Prabhupada. They understood each other immediately very well. Prabhupada could understand he was not ordinary. He was a Zen Buddhist, and he brought Zen Buddhism to the Western world. He's the one person who did it. And so Prabhupada understood that Prabhupada immediately understood this is an extraordinary personality. He's very noble. He has a demeanor of a very noble person. He's very humble, at the same time very intelligent, very swift, following Prabhupada, and very inquisitive. So Prabhupada asked always the same question to whoever he met, namely, what is your philosophy? What is your philosophy? Because otherwise you cannot talk to the person. You have to find out where he is. And Durkheim spoke, and it was very powerful, quite powerful. It was very elegant, very how he puts it together, and it was to the point. It was Zen Buddhist philosophy. And the problem with Buddhism, any type of Buddhism, is as much as Jewish, Christians, and Muslim religion, they do not have a concept of soul. They talk about reincarnation, like the present Dalai Lama is the 14th incarnation of the Buddha, Avalokiteshvara. It's a reincarnation. So they talk about reincarnation, but what travels there is not the soul. They don't know this. It's the mind. The mind, when the soul is traveling, the mind travels goes with the soul, right? The mind, the subtle body, linga sarira, is traveling. That means mind, intelligence, and false ego is traveling into another body on the basis of the soul. The soul wants to go. And so Prabhupada explained to him. After the first doctor talked for half an hour, Prabhupada listened very carefully, and then he knew how to hit him. Prabhupada found the spot. And so Durkheim asked him, Swamiji, what do you think of my presentation? Prabhupada smiled and said, not very intelligent. With a big smile on his face, And Durkheim, not very intelligent, Swamiji, why you say that? I mean, he was kind of really in a shock, because nobody has ever told him that. I mean, he has seen many, I will tell you later at the end, he has seen everybody and his mothers on this planet who was famous, before. And so then he said, Swamiji, why you say that? And Prabhupada beautifully explained to him that beyond Buddhism, there is the soul. And that is a servant of Krishna. And so he repeated 4 times, 5 times. He said, first thing we have to understand, you're not the body, and you understand that? We are the soul. We are not the subtle body that travels, we are the soul. Then, what is the soul? We are part of God. And then the next step, what is the business of the soul? Your duty is to serve God. He never heard that before. And Prabhupada repeat. It's very simple. Actually, it's the entire philosophy of the Hare Krishna movement in how many seconds? Somebody can stop me? You have to watch? Who stops me? 1, 2, 3. I'm not this body, I'm spirit, soul, I'm part of God, my duty is to serve God. Stop.
7 seconds.
Huh?
7 seconds. 7 seconds.
7 seconds, the whole philosophy. But, of course, you have to purport it. Even you're not the body is what people in generally don't understand. That's the bottom line of mundane civilization. The whole basis is that I'm the body. Not everybody. There's no question of I'm a soul. That's very high. That's the beginning of Vedanta philosophy. Aham Brahmasmi. I'm spirit. That's the beginning of Vedanta philosophy, that I'm a spirit, I'm not the soul. But that escapes most people on this planet, that they're souls. And therefore their whole life is wasted. It's wasted. Because even what they achieve, all wealth, all fame, whatever even if they have muscles like a gorilla, next life they will be born in a very humble position, less gorillas. Maybe one of these little street monkeys or whatever it may be that harass us in Vrindavan. And so the soul, that is the subject. And Tamakkrishna Goswami told me that he was invited by Harvard University, Department of Religion, to discuss philosophy. And they were Christians, they were Muslim. And one Christian, and then Tamas started talking. And then he said, now I presented my case, who will talk? One person came to him and said, we can't keep up with you. We don't have a concept. In none of our Abrahamic religion, we have a concept of soul. We don't understand what soul is. Defined, clear understanding. For the soul, there's never birth nor death. In all Abrahamic religion, there is a birth is when you were born. My birth is 1946. Who's my father? My father is my earthly father. There's no concept of the soul coming from the spiritual world. So that was the subject. And Durkheim, when Prabhupada was finished, he stood up in front of all these people. We were young. We were 17, 18 years old. I mean, think about the Hare Krishna movement at that time. My first GBC Krishnadas, he was 16 years old. He met Prabhupada, there were already devotees in Germany, and he was from Germany. Prabhupada met him in England. He said, you should go become the GBC in Germany. With 16 years, can you imagine? So it's incredible, you know. So we were all young people sitting there, 30 of us. Prabhupada said, Durkam, and Durkam got up and he paid his dandavat in front of Prabhupada. He got up and said, please, Swamiji, accept me as your younger brother, because he was 2 months younger than Prabhupada. And so, in the next days, I saw this, he would walk with Prabhupada. That was a picture, we saw that. Prabhupada is talking, they had great love for each other and appreciation. He was walking, and he was a very stately man, as you can see, even the way he walks, you know. You know, this is how a very elegant and very Socratic person walks. He's right. The eyes are, if you look at a picture like this, everybody will look at this man, you know. Here. Over the fields every morning. And then Prabhupada would explain to him. And you see, Durkam has a big smile on his face, because it was nectar for him, pure nectar, to talk to Prabhupada. And then, after 4 or 5 days, I brought him to the railway station. And he said, Prithu Das. He said, I met many gurus in India, many swamis, many mahants. He said, many babas. He said, many incarnations. He said, many incarnations. And he said, I saw the Pope, I saw, practically speaking, everybody in the religious field in Western countries who is somebody. He said, I've never met a person like your spiritual master. He said, never. He said, he is on the other side. You know, he's on the other edge. Er ist durch in Germany, is durch. It means if you drill a hole in the wall, and then there's a driller, and then all of a sudden, you're durch. You can see it on the other side. He says, der ist durch. It's a German way to say, er ist durch. He's on the other side. I thank you so much, Prithu Das. This is the greatest day of my life. Think about that. This man was so famous as a Zen Buddhist, yet 30 German bishops sitting at his feet learning meditation. Christians, Catholic bishops. It's the highest, as high as you can get, except minus the Pope. They were coming to him in his seminar, very famous seminar, to take to meditation, to Zen Buddhist meditation, because they couldn't sleep at night. Like everybody else who's managing, you know. And so he said that thing, and it was just amazing to me, how Prabhupada was so wonderful. And after, I want to tell you one story more. There was another great personality that Prabhupada wanted to see. His name is Martin Heidegger. He is considered to be the most famous philosopher of the last century. Easy. He wrote a book, Sein und Zeit, Being and Time. The Being in Time. It's a almost transcendental book. It's a very powerful book. And so Prabhupada wanted to see him because Shamasundar Prabhu, he studied Heidegger. He thought it was extra. He came all the way from America to study Heidegger. And so I heard Prabhupada wanted to meet him, so I went all the way down to the Black Forest where he had his retreat. And I knocked at the door. A woman, this was in Freiburg, not in his retreat, in Freiburg, in the main city where he was teaching. And I knocked at the door, a woman opened, older elderly woman, she said, young man, who are you? She was shocked. I said, relax. I said to her, relax, relax, relax. Everything is okay. I'm a monk from an Eastern tradition, and my spiritual master, my guru, would like to talk to your husband, Professor Heidegger. She said, young man, it is too late. I said, why? He said, well, he doesn't understand anything. Can I have that book for a moment? Your book? For one moment. He said he doesn't understand anything anymore. I said, well, he won't complain if I go upstairs, isn't it? She said, yeah, that's true. She laughed. So I went upstairs, and he was lying there, like this, you know. He was completely gone. And she stood at the feet, and she gave me a chair. I sat on a chair. I said, Professor Heidegger. 3 times, Professor Heidegger. No reaction, Professor Heidegger. And then I took the Bhagavad Gita that I wanted to give him, and I touched his finger. I said, Professor Heidegger. His hand went like this. He took the book. The other hand came, took that book. Bhagavad Gita. I know this book, Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita. And he pressed it to his breast and faded away again. And the wife said, how did you do that? I've not seen him like this since a year. It was the first time that he spoke something which made sense. You know? So you see how Prabhupada's books are powerful. That she could make this man who was unconscious, conscious. He had not been conscious for a year. And he woke up to consciousness just by touching Bhagavad Gita. You know, it's only one book. I got one book in the evening. I joined the next day, the Hare Krishna movement, because it's very powerful books. It's so powerful. Prabhupada said even if somebody reads only one page, then Prabhupada said even one sentence, and he said even one word, he's spiritually surcharged. And the proof is, I told this story already, that I found out that one of our devotees, the sannyasi, Chandramoli Swami, there are 3 devotees of Prabhupada. He had extraordinary experiences when reading Prabhupada's books loud. There's Keshavarti Maharaj, and there's another devotee in San Diego, I forgot his name right now, and there's this Chandramoli Swami. And so I heard from Keshavarti, he has the best experience. So I went on the internet, I wrote him. I said, is that true, that you had a magic experience? He said, yes. He said, I was reading 2 hours, 3 hours, and all of a sudden the whole atmosphere changed. And I stopped reading, and the sentence where I had stopped, Prabhupada's voice came in and started reading it. He said, it went on for 5 minutes. He said, it was unreal, I couldn't believe it. It was like a tape recorder. Prabhupada was present and spoke the Krishna book that he was reading right now. And so this gives you an idea where Prabhupada is. He's everywhere. You know, I can give you a very personal story. That Prabhupada was put into samadhi, put some marble plate on the ground, 4 meters deep or 5. Then Prabhupada's body sitting in samadhi, cross-legged, like yourself. And then put salt, so that no vermin, no mouse can go into the body, up to here. Then they put a bamboo rod on Prabhupada's head, all the way 5 meters big, and then earth, again salt, then earth, up to here. And the bamboo rod was there, somebody made a little mound around it, pulled the rod out, and I saw the hole, I was standing right there, fell in. So at night, I looked at that hole in my dream, and the hole opened like this, in front of me. It grew like a chimney, and I leaned on this chimney. All of a sudden there was some light. True story, I cannot lie in front of the deity. Prabhupada came from the right in a very effulgent form, very effulgent. And he leaned on the other side, and he looked at me and said, they think that I'm dead. And then he disappeared. Such a significant dream. Prabhupada said, when you dream of the spiritual master after he passed, they're very significant. You know, this was a very significant dream that Prabhupada, he's here, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, he reasons ill who thinks that Vaishnava dies whilst he's living still in sound. It's right there. And he can speak, read the Krishna book to Chandramoli Swami. So these books are not ordinary. That Professor Heidegger, he woke up just by touching Bhagavad Gita from his inability to exist, practically speaking. So Durkheim, he put it into perspective. Prabhupada was very, very, very powerful, very, very pure, and very, very special. And here's the next story. Father Emmanuel, you see there is a monk here. And if you would to look at his hands here, I can't enlarge it with this program, you'll find that there are beads. And see, he was chanting on his beads while Prabhupada was talking. And so Prabhupada, while he was moving his beads, Prabhupada wondered. He said, Father Emmanuel, he was a Benedictine monk, and a very wonderful person, really wonderful, very sincere. I called him up. He wrote many books on the chanting of the holy name of Jesus. That's why I became attracted to him. He was chanting on the names, on his beads, the names of Jesus, thinking that Jesus is God. There's some truth in it, because what is it? Shakshatari tunazamasya shastre, sadbi, that the spiritual master should be worshipped as good as God, because he's a representative of God. So there is some truth in it. And in fact, there is one famous Russian, this tradition of chanting the names of Jesus on beads is 1,900 years old. It came out of the desert of Egypt, San Anthony. And they were just doing this one thing. And there are hundreds and hundreds of monks living on a peninsula in Greek. And everybody is chanting. They're living, it's just a mountain. They're all into the mountain. It's just like in Tibet. It's incredible. And you can visit, but they only let boys in. What they do now, one lady from America, of course, Americans, she dressed up as a man, and it was detected, and it's a long story. I will not tell you here. If anybody knows the details, it's quite funny, actually. And so this tradition is very ancient, and in Russia, one famous saint, Serafim Sarovsky, I think it was, he said that my realization is that the name and Jesus is the same. This is very close. So Prabhupada understood this when he saw that. He had not met this tradition before, but he was happy when he saw that he was chanting this. And so he said, well, Prabhupada said, Krishna and Christ is very close together. You know, whether you chant Krishna or Christ, you should stay there. Because this man is not going to change in his old age. He was not, you know. He said, stay there and do that. And are you a vegetarian? And he said, yes, I'm a vegetarian. Prabhupada said, just continue on this path. Prabhupada was very happy with this monk, very humble person, you could see, and a serious person. He was sincere. Then Prabhupada turned to this gentleman here. You see this man here? And see, Professor Porsche. Oops. Oh no, Professor Porsche, yes. He was a professor for Christian theology, and Prabhupada said, what is Professor Porsche? I'm glad you came, etc., etc., etc. And what's your philosophy? And he spoke the classical Christian philosophy that nobody comes to the Father but through me, and unless you turn to Jesus, you go to hell, and you have to drink the blood of Jesus and whatnot. And so then after some time, Prabhupada became bored. I think he really yawned. And the man said, Swamiji, what do you think? And Prabhupada said, there was a long pause, and he said, 2,000 years have passed. He said, and still you don't understand Jesus. It was enormous. And it was like Prabhupada said, like this, I will tell you now how he said it. 2,000 years passed. And still you don't understand Jesus. I mean, it was awesome. It was like a universe was talking. Prabhupada in his deep voice, you know, the absolute silence in the room. Can you imagine? The room was, that voice was in the room. It stood there for some time, for 10 minutes or something. And then the man said, why? And Prabhupada said, it was all awesome. He said, if you know Jesus, you understand Krishna. If you understand Jesus, you understand Krishna. If you understand Krishna, you understand Jesus. If you say you love Jesus, you must love Krishna. He's a father. Jesus said you should love your father. Love your Lord. If you love Krishna, you love Jesus also. And if you tell me that you want to love only Jesus and not Krishna, that means you have no knowledge. Such an important sentence, you have no knowledge. In knowledge there is no conflict. Jesus he doesn't say he's God. Somebody called him Master, you're good. He said, good is God alone. It's written in the Bible, good is God alone. When somebody just called him good, what to speak of the claim that I'm God? So, awesome what Prabhupada said there to this man. He was shattered, and then Prabhupada explained to him the philosophy. It's one of the highlights of my experience. And then here is an Indian scholar, and he said, Swamiji, there are many gods. There's Ganapati, and there is Shiva, and there is also everybody and his mothers, and Prabhupada said, that's all right. But now I want to focus on this gentleman. Mayavadi. And so let me go a little further, Father Emmanuel. And then Prabhupada walked with this man, you see. And even while he's walking, he's chanting. He never stopped chanting. And this is now 40 years later, the same man. You see that? And I'm on the other side, my body is on the other side. I'm on the other side, in fact. And we have been friends because he was so close, unbelievably close, And this is the last picture of him because he died right after that. And he said, Prithu Prabhu, he said, I thought a lot about the Hare Krishna movement over the last 40 years, 45 years. And I came to the conclusion that there's a lot of piety in the Hare Krishna movement, and therefore it will flourish. Such a nice understanding. If there's piety, it will flourish. Wherever there's Krishna and Arjuna, there's victory. He understood this. It will flourish, he said. He said, in other words, nobody can stop it. He could understand that. A wonderful man. And then you see some morning walks. He went on morning walks. Awesome picture of Srila Prabhupada over the fields of Frankfurt in the morning. And you see Prabhupada would discuss with us the philosophy. By the way, the previous butcher is here, listening very intensely. And quite a bit of these people are dead by now. They're not anymore alive, because we are in death row in our age. Prabhupada disciples are in death row. It's just a matter of time. It might be the last time I can sit here. You never know. And then Prabhupada would tell, he loved to tell jokes. Like there was this king of Bengal. He had a joker. His name was, what was his name? Gopal. And so, this is a joke. Prabhupada said, Gopal was asked by the king, Gopal, what is the difference between you and a fool? Right? The emperor sitting there. Gopal stood up and said, 3 foot, Your Majesty. And we all enjoy anything. And Prabhupada said, one time the favorite elephant died of the king. And everybody is afraid to bring the message, because the messenger might be killed. That is an old tradition, who brings bad news. And so they approached Gopal and said, Gopal, the only person who can do that is you. He said, very dangerous, you have to give me lakhs of rupees. So they gave him a whole trunk of money. So Gopal went to the king and said, Your Majesty, your elephant. My elephant? Your favorite elephant. What happened? What happened? What happened? No. Don't worry. Relax. He's lying on the ground very peacefully, but he doesn't breathe. So, you enjoy that? Me too. And so Prabhupada would tell jokes like this, and we would enjoy that. And he walked, and here also you see this gentleman here. I'll show the next picture. That's myself. and on these pictures. And there's some more. Prabhupada talks to Hansaduta, and I'm in the background there, listening what Prabhupada said. Every word is so important. You know, people when they listen, they look on the ground to get the whole thing, every syllable of it, because it was pure nectar. And then some initiations took place, and one of them was the butcher. And this is the last picture. Now I could say so much more. I don't know if we have much time left. What is the time situation? I mean, I've not even started talking about Prabhupada. You know, how can we stretch it to the noon prasadam? No, huh? Who's here of authority? Is temple president here? Temple commander? Anybody? What should I do? Huh? That's it, huh? Right? Huh? What do you want? Should I go more? Yes. Okay. Then let me finish this chapter. What happened? Okay. So in Germany, Prabhupada, some things, small things, but he liked, he would go through the whole house, castle, from top to bottom, and looked at it and knock at the door. So it was locked. Prabhupada said, is there somebody inside? Yes, Srila Prabhupada. Somebody opened the door. What are you doing? He said, I'm sleeping, Srila Prabhupada. In the middle of the day, Srila Prabhupada said, I'm so tired, I worked all morning. Prabhupada said, take rest. Take rest. So he would go in the kitchen and check if the kitchen was clean. Whole house he went. And one time he found me, I was in my office because I was managing this event, and I had a board, magnetic board, like you can stick little stickers on a fridge, right? Magnetic fridge, every housewife knows this, our ladies know that. And so it was a magnetic board and all the names were there. And I could shift people from one place to another, from one department to the other. So I was shifting, in the middle of shifting, all of a sudden I felt somebody's behind me. Oh, Srila Prabhupada, I'm sorry, I paid my obeisances. And he said, what is that? You know, I said, Srila Prabhupada, this is my managerial board. He said, how does it work? I said, I can take a person from here to there, from the kitchen into the Sankirtan, from the Sankirtan into the cleaner, from this. He said, how does it work? He said, it is magnetic. Magnetic. Can I try? I said, sure, Srila Prabhupada. He said, all right. Let's take this lady from here to there, and this boy from here to there, and this, that. I mean, he ruined my whole managerial board, practically speaking, for a minute or two. And then he looked at me, the board was here, he looked at me very serious and said, and all this will fail if there's no love and trust between the devotees. It's a very important lesson Prabhupada gave. All this will fail if there's no love and trust between the devotees. Very important instruction. And so then we went to Sweden, and Prabhupada told us that he said all of a sudden, you hear the dog barking? He said, yes. He said, Nehru, our Prime Minister, he took birth as a dog in Sweden in his next life. Prabhupada knew this from Sridhar Swami, his godbrother, who had met a very most important or famous astrologer in India. It's quite shocking if you think about it. In one life you're in that position, in the next you may be a dog. You may be as rich as Mr. Ambani in one life. But if you don't do charity, and particularly religious charity, you may end up as somebody knocking at the window in Delhi in traffic and says, Sahab, rupee or something. You never know. You know, karma is very stringent. You know, if we have things, we have to use it in Krishna's service, because it is not our property. So then Prabhupada went to a university, and the people there in the university, I tell you that story, it's an important story. The devotees in that, the people in that university were very arrogant. They were all communists, socialists, anarchists. I mean, everything left. Left on the left side of society. And so Prabhupada came into this university, in this room, and immediately he could understand their mindset. They're rebellious like anything. And of course, communists believe in classless society. There are no classes. And so Prabhupada said, so, there are 4 classes of man in human society. I mean, it was like throwing water in their face. Everybody woke up like that. You know, they were all sitting there, 4 classes of men, you know. And then Prabhupada said, yes, 4 classes of men. There's a Brahmin class, first class, Kshatriya, second class, etc. And he explained, you know, and everybody was kind of quiet but very nervous, you know, and unhappy about it. So finally, one student stood up and said, and you think, of course, you're a first-class man. I was in a shock. I mean, if I would probably get him, I would have killed him, murdered him. My blood was boiling. Germany. It's stated that in heaven the Germans are the mechanics, right? In heaven the Germans are the mechanics, and in hell they are the policemen. You know? So I would have liked to just smash him up. And the Prabhupada said, no, like this, you know, no. It was like trying to make him understand. He said, no, you misunderstand me. He said, I'm not first-class man. He said, actually, I'm a 5th-class man. There was dead silence in the room. Dead silence. And then I saw Prabhupada had a spectacle on his nose. You know. I was sitting there about this distance. And he said, into the silence, because I'm the servant of everyone. And then 2 tears came down his cheeks. It's very beautiful. You know? That I could understand that Prabhupada, he was actually the servant of everyone. I could see it. And he was not just talking it, he was it. He is it, the servant of everyone. Most humble of all. And then all the students looked back to this fellow as if he were a demon. You know? He sat down, he was shut down for the rest of the day because he was so embarrassed by Prabhupada's humility. You know, this is such a nice story to see Prabhupada, how he was a first-class man, supermost human being, practically speaking, because what he did could not be done. And we know in many ways that Prabhupada was superhuman, that one of our ladies, Yamuna, she walked behind Prabhupada and on a muddy road, and she couldn't see his foot tracks. She saw her foot tracks, she saw everybody else's foot tracks, but she couldn't see Prabhupada's foot tracks. And that's reported not just one time, a couple of times by devotees. They couldn't see Prabhupada's footprints, you know, because he was a superhuman being. You know, he was just like spiritual or angels, they don't touch the ground, we know that. And so Prabhupada was like that, you know. Nobody could do what Prabhupada did in such a short time. You know, it is just unbelievable, and without Prabhupada, nobody of you would be here, and I not also, you know. I asked him one time, there was a verse in Bhagavad Gita that I translated. I was one of the translators in Germany to translate Bhagavad Gita into German from English. And I said to Prabhupada, I found a verse from Bhagavatam, can you clarify this? It says there, it's a quotation Bhagavatam verse, that one who chants the holy name has taken bath in all the holy rivers of India and has visited all the whole pilgrim places. Does it mean in my last life? And Prabhupada said, maybe, and he shook his head and smiled, maybe. He said, but what you really have to understand is, he looked at me deep into the eyes and said, I created your good fortune. Think about that. So he created your good fortune, everybody's fortune, the fortune of thousands of people. Without that good fortune, you would not be here. You would just be in IT and work your back off and pass a life like every cat and dog if Prabhupada would not have picked us up. And his mercy is there for everyone. Like Ganaganatvam, it says in our samsara prayers. In the first, Ganaganatvam is like a rain cloud. The rain cloud showers it's rain indiscriminately. Sometimes on the sea, and it has no result. Sometimes on rocky land, it has no result. And sometimes on the fertile land, there's abundance of result. So the cloud of mercy that's sent by Lord Krishna, Spiritual Master takes the mercy from the Supreme Lord, and like the rain cloud, he showers the mercy, his mercy all over the place. Some people take it. Small, not a majority, small people take it. And so if anybody is taking that mercy of Prabhupada, he is very, very, very fortunate. We cannot even imagine. Without Prabhupada, you wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here, and thousands and millions by now. People wouldn't be here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. There's more, but I think I should end because this class is historically late. It's already almost 10 o'clock, and it may be the world record here in Pune. Or you have sometimes classes that go up to noon or the evening. There's enough material to talk about. Another time. I think, Prabhu, we stop here, right? Yes? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premananda Hari Hari.